Hello and welcome. We are live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, and you're watching The Week Ahead with myself, Liesl Wilson, where throughout the week you can interact with us on our social media platforms at The Week Ahead or using the hashtag The Week Ahead. So on that note, let's take a look at what we can expect for this week. All right, so the murder trial of the 5 men accused of killing soccer star Senzo Meyiwa resumes in the High Court in Pretoria on Monday. Meyiwa's long-time friend Tumelo Madlala is expected to be cross-examined by advocate Zandile Mshololo, the lawyer representing accused number 5. During his testimony, Madlala dropped a bombshell pointing to accused number 2 Bongani Ntanzi as one of the intruders inside the house the day that Meyiwa was shot dead. At the same time, Ntanzi is still awaiting a decision on his bail application from October, in which he claimed he was assaulted into confession.
Tumelo Madlala shocked the gallery when in open court he pointed to accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi, as one of the robbers inside the house that Meyiwa had pinned against the wall.
Here's this man with the blue t-shirt or green t-shirt. He's the one that was held by Senzo. Sorry? He's the one who had the beard that was cut or shaved.
But in cross-examination this week by advocate Zandile Mshololo, Madlala is expected to be hammered on this because he never participated in any identity parade which had any of the 5 men currently in the dock.
I put it to that there was no identification parade with regard to the accused before the court, correct?
Ngithi kwena ke yayingekho ke ID parade nabamangalelwa la abaphambi kwenkantolo kuyiqiniso lokho.
Yebo ngingaze ngiyenze laba ID parade abakhona.
That is correct. With regards to the accused before court, I never attended an ID parade.
The defense also tried to dismiss Madlala's version and insists one of the occupants inside the house pulled the trigger that killed Meyiwa.
Kelly wanted to give the firearm to the deceased. Do you mind to wait for me to finish and wait for the interpreter? What have changed now? That's when a shot went off and hit the deceased at close range.
Chike Kelly ke wayesefuna unikezela isibhamu asidlulise kena ke umufi ila khona ke sase siqhuma khona ke isibhamu eseduze kakhulu.
Ayikaze yenzeke leyo.
That thing never happened. That never happened.
Isibhamu bengekho lo ngendlini because waphuma wabaleka yena.
When the firearm went off, Longwe was not in the house because he ran out.
There were also more bombshells from the defense that Meyiwa was having an affair with his then-girlfriend, Kelly Khumalo's sister, Zandi. Madlala also did not deny selling personal photographs he had with Meyiwa to Netflix. He's also expected to be grilled on that. Criselda Lewis, SABC News in Johannesburg.
All right, so justice can take on many hues and forms. It may be skewed or it may be righteous. An art exhibition in Rosebank titled Diaries on Injustice focuses on slain football star Senzo Meyiwa. Artists Lazy Hound and Sibamandla X use their artwork to take a critical look at the justice system.
It's said a picture paints 1,000 words. Far too often, the scales of justice tilt with the heavy weight of money. Senzo Meyiwa's family has been searching for the truth surrounding his mysterious and tragic death in 2014. 2 artists who compiled a large collaborative piece question if the justice system favors those who can afford it.
We can't ignore the fact that we each experience injustices and we each become victims at times we don't expect. We become victims of theft, victims of murder, victims of rape, and so forth. And therefore, if you can't trust on the justice system, therefore, who are we? Who are our protectors? So now it means barely if you don't have any money to afford good lawyers. your case is no case.
Umhlatshelo wokushiswa udliwe ngumlilo can be loosely translated as a burnt offering. It's an artist's sacrifice synonymous with an African cleansing ceremony where an animal is slaughtered. But only this time, it is burnt for the smoke to reach Senzo Meyiwa while cleansing the nation. This is a ritual usually performed in the African culture to cleanse a family from the dark cloud associated with loss. It is also a plea for the country never to experience what happened to Meyiwa ever again.
Not a lot of maybe artists wants to put themselves in a position when to make a commentary on this case, as well as like other galleries, because it's still very sensitive. But then, we believe that, at least we started this space because we do believe in the fact that art is very much important as much as like journalism.
Police Minister Bheki Cele is one of the artwork's focal points. This after he promised to crack the case within weeks, while girlfriend Kelly Khumalo is draped in a robe of money. Some of the accompanying pieces include advocate Zandile Mshololo, who is presented as the face of justice.
She doesn't beat around. She goes straight to the point. She asks relevant questions. And it's the field she is in is regarded as she's a woman. So it's not easy for a woman to be, I could say she's courageous.
The artwork will be on display for another 2 weeks. Balentle Mthethwa, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Right, in other news now, climate change has heightened risks farmers face with unpredictable weather patterns, but not many take up agricultural insurance. Experts say it's about 40% of crop farmers that take up insurance. Others find it to be too expensive, whilst others find other risk mitigating measures. Agriculture insurance can cover farmers against damage caused by hail, frost, drought, floods, locusts, as well as other pests.
Farmers are at the receiving end of the unpredictable weather patterns like extreme floods, droughts, changing temperatures, as well as pests and diseases associated with climate change. Agri-SA says the extreme weather events have over the years devastated many farmers, with many failing to recover from them. The Agricultural Federation says the sector is the most vulnerable to the effects of climate change, as good climate conditions are crucial to produce food.
Our producers at grassroots level experience these climate variabilities firsthand. Water is critical for production, either for irrigation or rain-fed agriculture. And we have seen parts of the country, like I've mentioned, are more drier, such as in the Karoo. We also know that there's a day zero in Nelson Bay Metro is also a reality. The Northern Cape is very prone to drought disasters. And then there is flooding that can take place in the eastern parts, like I said, KwaZulu-Natal, and the sugarcane farmers, vegetable farmers, all those producers in that districts are severely affected.
With the difficult economic conditions characterized by the high cost of living, farmers are faced with high fuel prices and increasing fertilizer prices as a result of the war in Eastern Europe. To cut costs, many opt not to take insurance. Agricultural insurance, meant to cushion farmers against unforeseen damage to either crops or various assets, is either misunderstood or is seen as too expensive, while others opt for other ways to mitigate risks.
From a crop perspective, we see about probably only 40% of farmers take up insurance, keeping in mind that insurance is a risk mitigating tool. Some farmers may, for example, construct hail nets. Others may diversify in that they've got farms in different areas, so the weather patterns in the different areas also provide them with some protection. But generally, the types of crops that we also insure is maize as well as wheat. Those are your two predominant ones, as well as soybeans and sunflower. But generally, about 40% of farmers take up crop insurance. We are also targeting your smaller scale farmers as well, because there is a lack of knowledge about insurance with your small scale farmers.
Johan van den Berg, agricultural meteorologist, says experience in crop insurance has taught him that it's very difficult to predict what climate change will do, making assessing risk difficult. He says risk assessment has become more reactive.
In terms of crop insurance, it's more a reactive type of situation that they are doing. It's very difficult to predict what is climate change going to do. They may add some rating for the increase in the variability, the uncertainty about things. But more often, their rating is as a result of what happened in the past years. So if there are more frequent or more sincere or more events and more higher damage in terms of crops, the claims, then it forms part of the rating process.
Van den Berg says there is an expectation of above average rainfall for this summer season. He says we are currently in the third consecutive La Nina year, but there is an expectation that La Nina will weaken in the second half of the summer season, leading to below average rainfall from February and March of next year, before El Nino hit, leading to more drier conditions from next winter. Gloria Sefakomosi, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Right, so the African continent is going to be the region hardest hit by climate change unless the issues of adaptation is prioritized. This is the view of delegates attending COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. Many countries in Africa have experienced flooding due to unusually heavy rains, as well as drought, particularly in the Horn of Africa. Meanwhile, African group of ministers will today hold a meeting to map a way forward on the continental position to climate change. Perhaps for further developments at the COP27 summit. Earlier on, we spoke to SABC International News Editor, Sophie Mukwena.
The leaders or the ministers of environmental affairs who are responsible particularly to issues related to climate change are currently meeting behind closed doors. Earlier on, they had comments to make, and we heard the United Nations representatives saying that they do support the continent, particularly as a developing region, because you have to take care of the previous disadvantages that were there, particularly when you come to issues related to industrialization. You know that the countries, particularly the G7 countries, in their process of industrialization, they have really messed up the world, and therefore many are calling for developed countries, particularly the G20, to make a commitment in terms of resources and also finances to assist those countries that are affected and are developing and they don't have resources. But the issue also of the just energy transition, the Africa group will have to come up with one position in terms of what do they mean when they talk about just energy transition and what needs to be done. We know that South Africa has been very vocal on the issue of the just energy transition. The president saying that you cannot quickly move out of fossil fuel and drop the coal as a continent, because you still have to develop the continent, but also you are not at the level of development where you can just do this haphazardly, because you are going to lose jobs, livelihoods, and poverty and disgruntlement, restlessness on the continent is likely to ensue if you don't address the issue of just energy transition. And of course, the other issue is adaptation. How do you fund adaptation where you are going to ensure that particularly small communities are able to, first of all, learn and understand climate change, but also understand what they have to do when they experience floods or you have challenges of drought. Egypt, as the host country, took a decision that this will be a COP for implementation, not just talking heads where you make pledges and commitments, but you don't implement. And therefore, they are going to push for timeframes and targets and specific amounts and specific projects for implementation. As you pointed out, during COP15 in Paris, there was an agreement that an amount of 100 billion will be set aside to address climate change. But we are told that it's not clear whether that money was made available. There are reports that 80 billion has been spent, but other countries are saying we haven't seen anything. You also have a situation at Glasgow last year. Many countries made commitments, some bilateral with other countries, others collectively with regions. We know that some G7 countries, including the European Union and some international financial institutions, made a commitment to assist South Africa in particular on its just energy transition program with 8.5 billion. But we don't know yet how that money is going to be spent, because you have a challenge whereby 95% of that amount are loans, and therefore the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, saying that you have to rearrange that finances and to ensure that a majority, or you have a chunk of grants, so that we don't find ourselves in a situation where we have to pay the loans and we can't survive. You know that South Africa is now very indebted, and we had, when the finance minister was addressing the framework for the budget next year, that we really have to service our debt, and therefore you cannot continue to go and borrow when you cannot pay, because generations to come will have a problem. Today, we are not expecting any activities at the pavilion and the vicinities or where you have events, because they took a decision to take a break, but they will start on Monday. We know that many different groups will be protesting, trying to put across their views. Next week, we also want to focus on the island nations. You know that with the floods, you have a serious problem with island nations who are really suffering. We'll also look at Africa in relation to the Horn of Africa, where there is drought and people are suffering, which is leading to security challenges in the Sahel region. But later today, the Minister of Environmental Affairs from South Africa will open a South African pavilion at around 6 p.m. today, and we'll get more information, and a number of companies that are here, a very large contingent of business in this summit, and they are supporting South Africa, your financial institution, mining, and also other areas of business, and they are here to really make their voice heard in terms of how we can proceed, particularly on the issue of just energy transition. Earlier on, the UN representative on environment in Africa was talking about the G20 meeting, and this brought in my mind that starting from tomorrow, the G20 leaders will converge in Bali, Indonesia, and the issue of climate change will also dominate the talks, while you also have other issues related to COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine, and generally the global economy. And it is the global economy that is kind of derailing implementation of all agreements taken or commitment made in the previous meetings.
All right, let's take a quick ad break and continue with more news and updates on the other side upon our return. Right, welcome back. The week ahead continues. Sadio Mane has been included in Senegal's squad for the World Cup in Qatar, despite suffering an injury playing for Bayern Munich on Tuesday. Senegal's coach, Aliou Cissé, says they are confident that Mane could recover in time to play at the tournament, but Senegal begins their Group A match against the Netherlands on the 21st of November.
Lunjay, Nicolas Jackson, Sadio Mane has been named in Senegal's squad for the World Cup in Qatar, despite suffering an injury. The 30-year-old's decisive penalty kicks won Senegal both the Africa Cup of Nations and World Cup qualification this year. But on Tuesday, while playing for Bayern Munich, Mane suffered an injury to his right fibula. Senegal coach Aliou Cisse, announcing the squad on Friday, said dealing with an injury was a situation the national team had handled before.
Sadio is a special player in our team, so it's important for us to continue to monitor his injury while hoping that in 1 to 3 weeks there will be a positive outcome.
Cisse said the Senegalese Federation's doctor examined Mane on Thursday and had said surgery would not be required. In Senegal's capital Dakar on Friday, fans like Modou Mbaye were anxious for their talismanic striker.
We have other players, but Sadio is our pride. We love him, we breathe through him. He has carried the name of Senegal very far. We wish him a speedy recovery.
Cisse, who had his contract as coach extended by a further 2 years on Thursday, has kept faith with the majority of the squad that won the Cup of Nations in Cameroon. Senegal's first World Cup group stage match will be against the Netherlands on November 21st.
Right, so we'll be in conversation with SABC sports journalist Thando Mxoli just after this. In other news, just quickly though, it is the last day of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress, which is being held in Nasrec. This weekend, the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa opened up about the scandal for the first time. He's reported to have voluntarily spoke about the matter in his political overview report at the opening of the meeting. It's not quite clear whether this will end calls from the NEC members such as Lindiwe Sisulu and Tony Ngeni for him to step aside. But the former party president, Thabo Mbeki, has joined the meeting on his return from the Middle East. Perhaps for this and more, we're going to bring in our senior politics reporter, Samkele Maseko. Good afternoon, Samkele. Perhaps you can update us on what is the latest as the NEC meeting draws to a close.
The NEC meeting is drawing to a close this afternoon, with ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa expected to close the meeting at 4 o'clock this afternoon, and thereafter he will be jetting off to the G20 summit out in Indonesia. But in the meeting they did speak about matters pertaining to his Palapala farm, where he also hosts his ankoles and his buffaloes and other game animals that he has at his farm. He did speak on the theft of about $580,000 US at his farm, and not $4 million US as reported by Arthur Fraser, in the words of ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa in his political overview report. But that's not just only the matters that the NEC has been deliberating upon. They've been deliberating on the political report to be delivered at the 55th National Conference, the organizational report, which is meant to be delivered by the Deputy President of the ANC, and the Treasurer's report, which need to be adopted by this NEC in order to go to printing and to be handed to delegates on the first day of the conference of the ANC, of the 55th National Conference. Other topical issues relate to the preparations of this specific venue, Nasrec, and also the unsealing of the branch nominations by the ANC's Electoral Committee. I'm going to bring in the Secretary of the ANC's Electoral Committee, Chief Matsela, just to basically speak on the opening of those envelopes. Chief Matsela, provinces have started opening those provinces. When can we anticipate the Electoral Committee to conclude the tallying of the branch nominations?
Yes, in fact, the electoral agency that we've appointed as the Electoral Committee has now started capturing those nomination forms from the various branches. We start at the provincial offices, where we open in front of the provincial and regional secretaries as witnesses. So after that, we're going to have provincial consolidation in terms of the numbers of who got the most nominations from the provinces, especially for the top 6 and the top 80 additional candidates. That will culminate into a national list with the top 6 candidates, and also the top 200 candidates that will finally make it to the ballot for the national conference. So we expect all of that work to be done by the end of the month. Of course, the most important issue is that of vetting of candidates, and candidates getting to accept the nomination forms. And we vet the candidates in terms of the rules of the Electoral Committee.
What are some of those rules? Because in the previous press briefing by the chairperson of the Electoral Committee, former Deputy President of the ANC and former President Kgalema Motlanthe, he said that anyone who has an adverse finding by the Integrity Commission of the party cannot contest for a leadership position, which would mean if there is a recommendation for suspension and there is a recommendation to step aside, that person is eligible. 2 people come to mind. It's Dr. David Masondo, Dr. Zelina Mkhize, and a host of other NEC members, Ace Makashule, the suspended Secretary General. What happens to those individuals who've got those adverse findings from the Integrity Commission, in particular the Integrity Commission?
I must state from the onset that the rules apply fairly and evenly across the board, irrespective of who is affected. But in terms of the rules, all those with a criminal record and a jail sentence of more than 6 months do not qualify to be nominated at the conference. Those that are affected by the step aside rule, which says that if you have got a case pending before the court, you are not eligible to stand for nomination at the conference. But that is very different from those that have opened a case in a police station, because that has not been decided in terms of charges preferred by the prosecuting authorities. That's the main difference there.
On the other issues pertaining, will provinces be permitted to hold provincial general councils, or will the numbers just solely be tallied by the elections agency that you've appointed and also you as the electoral committee, or will they be allowed to have provincial general councils in order for those numbers to be consolidated and to be announced?
What we have said here at the NEC is that the electoral committee will be ready to come and present the consolidated nomination results for each province if they were to hold a provincial general council. But that's not our call. If they do so and they invite us, we will go there. The most important issue is that the custodian of the electoral data rests with the electoral committee, not with the provinces, because this is a national conference. Then the last issue that we need to emphasize is that the members of the ANC who are campaigning for various positions, be it the top 6 or the additional top 80, are required to disclose their sources of income in terms of finances, who's funding their campaigns, and how much are they using to fund certain aspects that are allowed within the rules.
You raised a very important point, because back here in 2017, subsequent to the announcement of the results and what transpired, CR17 bank statements came out. President Cyril Ramaphosa has been accused of buying delegates and buying the 2017 conference of the ANC. Have those who are contesting for positions this time around in this 55th National Conference starting declaring their donors?
Yes, we have almost about 10 candidates that have come forward now, indicating who's funding them. Others are indicating that they will only begin to campaign actively upon accepting nomination if they are nominated. So it looks like the leaders are ready to come forward, precisely to avoid allegations that are not founded or tested. We want information to be readily available so that there are no people who fund certain candidates with an intention to get business with the state in future, so that we avoid the ANC being captured by business people and the state itself.
Have the two main contenders for the presidency, looking at the branch nominations, it's broad daylight that it's a contestation between Dr. Zwelithini Mkhize and the incumbent Cyril Ramaphosa. Have those two individuals declared who their donors are for this conference?
No, they have not yet done so. We are waiting for them to do so. We've been engaging with some of them to indicate as to when they will be ready. There's a view that says that our deadline for Friday the 11th is too short. We think that we can be able to give people some more time to come forward with information.
How long will you be extending that period of declaration beyond the 11th? What is the cutoff date beyond the 11th that you'll now be proposing?
We'll have a meeting or a discussion on Tuesday this week, and then we'll take it from there after taking stock of who declared and what are the other challenges that people are facing in declaration. Because remember, this is being done for the first time. There are questions as to what kind of format do people use. So we have to assist them to package the information together.
The chairperson of the Electoral Committee, former Deputy President, former President Kgalema Motlanthe, is currently in Singapore. Is this not an indictment on the entire process that a person who's supposed to be chairing this particular important committee is still globe-trotting and out of the country, as opposed to being focused on squarely on something which is so contentious in the ANC, with many delegates and many leaders particularly saying there's vote buying, there's vote rigging, and it's a very contentious issue, particularly when it comes to credentials, which has stalled many regional and many provincial conferences?
No, not really, because the work of the Electoral Committee will start once the capturing and the consolidation process has been finalized. That's when the Electoral Committee will then analyze that data and take the matters forward. For now, the issues that we're dealing with are largely logistical and administrative. And remember, even the BGM process that has just been concluded on the 7th of November it's the responsibility of the Secretary General's office together with organizing unit. So we just doing oversight, getting reports. We've got the National Dispute Resolution Committee dealing with disputes, and we just play oversight at this point in time. But we're going to then be very hands-on in the next coming days.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chief Matsala, who is the Secretary of the ANC's Electoral Committee, speaking about the processes going forward, saying that they have started receiving declarations from those whom are contesting for leadership positions within the party. Just one quick question before I wrap. Has Lindiwe Sisulu, Minister Lindiwe Sisulu, an NEC member, declared her donors?
No, not yet.
So all the presidential candidates have not declared?
Some have declared.
Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma?
Yes, she sent a correspondence last night. We have a declaration.
Who are some of the top business people funding her particular campaign?
No, she says it's too early for her to be in a campaign. She's waiting for the nomination period to conclude. If we send her an acceptance form, if she's nominated, she's not sure whether she's nominated or not. If we send the nomination form and she accepts, then she'll begin a campaign for which she'll divulge further information. But we're happy with that explanation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chief Matsala, who is also the Secretary of the ANC's Electoral Committee, saying that some have started declaring. The only presidential candidate who sent correspondence at this stage is Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma.
Thank you very much for that update, Samkela Maseko. Again, this as the ANC wraps up its NEC meeting this past weekend. As we move back to one of our earlier stories, in 1 week's time, Qatar will host the opening match of the 22nd FIFA World Cup, becoming the first Middle Eastern country to stage soccer's biggest event. Now, the tournament kicks off on the 20th of November when the hosts Qatar take on Ecuador. This is at the Al Bayt Stadium in Al Khor. The final will be held on the 18th of December at the Lusail Stadium, but the 32 teams will be competing to dethrone France, who of course are the title holders, having won the 2018 World Cup in Russia, defeating Croatia 4-2 in that final. Perhaps for more on this, we are going to be joined by sports journalist Thando Mqoli. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to you.
It's quite an exciting time as we build up. 1 week to go.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for normal fans, but for some of us, it's a stressful time because we have to put together different broadcast plans and make sure things are interesting for the viewer.
Sure, and the back of that, I mean, it's still one of the biggest events to be taking place beyond the Olympics. So what really goes into the mammoth task that lies ahead?
It's huge. As we know, with our World Cup in 2010, FIFA literally takes over your country. And the international interest also, people literally take over a country. They come in for different teams and they follow those teams around a different country. They invest a lot of money in the country. Yeah. In terms of viewers, I remember Gianni Infantino talking about close to 5 billion TV viewers for this tournament. That's expectation from FIFA. So it's huge. Literally, it's touch and go between it and the Olympics in terms of which one is bigger. But this is a global event. It has global interest. And also, the longer the tournament goes, the more interest it develops. Even people who are not interested in soccer per se, start getting interested in what is going on. So it goes beyond just a simple country event. It becomes literally a global showpiece. Countries transform. We saw with our World Cup, a place like Cape Town, for example, you built this Greenpoint Stadium in a place where there was nothing really. So it's a mammoth event, and also it's got legacy issues. So even after the tournament, there's a lot of legacy issues that carry on with a tournament of this size. It's huge.
So you're speaking about the legacy issues, which obviously brings me to my next point surrounding controversies. Before we get there, though, I mean, I'm looking at Group F, G, and H. Africa seems to be well represented there. There is a strong presence, and I wonder how you'd weigh in on that. How do you think they're going to fare? I mean, speaking of controversies, technology, once again, also plays a role this time around.
First, let's start with Africa. To qualify for the World Cup as an African country is a difficult process. Yeah. It's an arduous process that you have to beat some really top sides. And the 5 that have made it through, look, they are top teams. They are there purely on form. They've shown the quality. You talked about Senegal earlier in your earlier package, whereby the star player Sadio Mane is an injury doubt. But that's not the first time they've gone into a big tournament with an injury dart. AFCON, the goalkeeper, Edwin Mendy, went into that tournament with a big injury dart. Everyone was saying he's injured, and they said, no, bring him to the camp. Our doctors will assess him, and then we'll decide as the tournament goes on. It's a gamble, but someone of that kind of quality, I'd rather have him in the team than not. If you have a chance of having Sadio Mane on for 10 minutes, you bring him along. So it's a gamble. Also, the one interesting thing about African countries, all of them are coached by locals. It's none of this situation whereby South Africa is coached by a Frenchman. All of them are coached by natives of those countries, and that's something we've never had before. All these guys are showing that even within, you can find top talent from a coaching perspective.
So speaking of the state of readiness then for Qatar as a whole, I mean, there's a lot of elements that come into the mix that we haven't seen previously in other World Cups. How would you assess, Wayne, on that culture, the rules of the games, the rules of the country itself? Yeah. How is that going to impact dynamics?
Yeah, there's been a lot of giving and taking, a lot of rules that you're talking about will have to be toned down a bit. But still, if you're going to invite the entire world, they need to somehow embrace what you are about, and you can't abandon everything. That said, Qatar has had human rights issues, which is a big worry, and a lot of people have voiced concerns about that. FIFA, being the big organization that they are, have gone in and have basically said, look, we need to sort out the labor issues in your country. You can't have human rights issues and labor issues when we bring in such a big tournament, and they've done their bit to help quell that situation. There's also been the
LGBTQIA+.
That one.
Yes.
There've also been those issues, and the leadership in Qatar, from both the country and the tournament, have come out and said, look, everyone will be welcome at the tournament. That's the theory. Everyone will be welcome. This is a global tournament. It's a tournament for everyone. They tried to basically showcase that part of the world, the Middle East, as a global destination. So we'll see how that plans out. There've been a lot of protests around the issues around Qatar, but still, they are setting up an interesting tournament. Everyone complained about the temperatures. Everyone complained about, for example, the rules you were talking about, alcohol consumption, which is a big thing of a tournament like this. All of those things, Qatar have basically put out the red carpet, and they've said, we're going to give you the best stadiums, we're going to give you the best stadium experience. You're worried about temperature? Don't worry, we'll bring, the temperature will be right. Literally, the temperature will be right. It will be air-conditioned stadiums, which is kind of crazy.
In a desert, right?
Yeah, but still, that's the kind of technology they've committed to a tournament of this size. So, look, I'm looking forward to seeing what they roll out. I've seen the stadiums. The stadiums are absolutely amazing. They're fantastic. It's not like they've copied stadiums from elsewhere. It's brand new designs. It looks very good. You know the pitch is going to be good when FIFA comes around. So, yeah, it's an interesting tournament.
I then want to go back to one of the earlier points you made. You spoke about injuries, some of the controversies, and just on the back of what you're saying now, wonder how this is then going to impact the football fraternity at large. We're in season. The season obviously has to pause whilst players are seconded and they're going to represent their countries. But what impact is this going to have in terms of rest, in terms of injuries going forward when they resume again?
Well, there shouldn't be a rest, because normally you'd be playing your league campaigns now. All leagues in the world play up until Christmas time. Then only England carries on over the time. So this would be actually a normal league time. Everyone should be in their peak condition. Okay. But unfortunately, it's a weird time for everyone else, because we're not used to having a World Cup this time of the year. Normally it's around June
exactly.
July. But because of the weather dynamics and everything, we had to consider that it would only make sense to have it now. But that said, the injuries, all the teams have been affected. Belgium, they're going in there with Lukaku, who's basically on one leg. France are going into the tournament without N'Golo Kante, without Paul Pogba. Those are big names.
Yeah.
and they're the defending champions. So we're sitting and we're saying, look, it's going to be interesting on all fronts. It's probably the most evenly matched World Cup we've seen in a long time. So we're hoping that a lot of African teams will get out of the group stages just to keep the interest going.
Yeah, no, the group stages look quite exciting.
Yeah.
I just quickly, as we wrap, I want to look at who your money's on. Who do you think is going to take this from France? Is France going to retain the title? What's your money on?
It's the middle of the month. Can you not have money on anything? But that's it. Look, I think I've put my money on Germany purely because of how they are very good at playing tournaments.
Okay.
Germany is my side, but that's it. Oh, there's some good teams there. There's some really good teams all
Ghana,
around.
Cameroon, Brazil, Spain.
Brazil have a very good team on paper.
Okay.
Whether that can translate to on-field performance, I don't know. But still, on paper, that Brazil team going forward is scary.
All right, so Thando, obviously the SABC broadcasts this. In terms of viewers who want to catch that, how do they go about doing that? We'll obviously be broadcasting throughout the games.
Many platforms, 5 channels. SABC 1, 2, 3, Telkom 1, and our OTT channel. And obviously, our news channel will be giving you all the latest updates. All our radio stations will be giving you all the actions, all 19 of them, and obviously our social media and digital platforms.
Thando Mkoli, obviously SABC sports journalist, really just giving us an update ahead of the FIFA World Cup that kicks off in Qatar in 1 week's time. All eyes will be glued on the Qatar, the world stage set for some of the greatest football memories that we can expect for some years to come. So we'll leave that conversation there and continue to monitor it as it unfolds and the build-up kicks off. But we're going to take a look at other news now, where heavy rains in the Northwest Province over the past few days have really seen large-scale flooding, mainly of agricultural land, and many dams are overflowing where fields are waterlogged, plants are dying due to overwatering, and grain farmers are not able to plant. SABC News reporter Dumeleng Khajane and video journalist Selo Mukhopa are in the Groot Mariko for more.
Indeed, as you know, rain is a blessing from above. It's a welcome blessing from above, but with it sometimes comes different challenges, and those challenges are also experienced in the Northwest Province. We've seen situations where some of the farming areas and residential areas got flooded in the Northwest Province. But currently we're at the Mariko Bosveld Dam here in Groot Mariko. As you can see there, water is overflowing. This is one of those dams that they do not use sluices like in other dams to release water, but this year they use water spillway to reduce the water once the dam is filled to capacity. And we're told by farmers in this area of Groot Mariko that they have different challenges, but I want to hear, or for you to hear those challenges, about those challenges from the farmers themselves. And I've invited Mr. Dan van der Merwe, who is a farmer in this area. Mr. van der Merwe, thank you very much for your time, sir. You're saying that you have different challenges that you are experiencing as the farmers. Please do paint a picture for us.
Yeah, I think the rain that we are receiving now is abnormal for this time of the year. Our average rainfall for November is something like 30 to 50 millimeters. In the catchment of the Mariko River, we had 80 millimeters up to 200 millimeters for the past 5 days. So we don't know what is coming. If this is the start of the season and the dams are already overflowing, perhaps we will have a very wet season. At this stage, the biggest problem is the wheat farmers. About 10% of the farmers did harvest, but the rest are still on the field, and we are losing quality now, and we are losing the possibility to lose the whole harvest if the rain keeps on. Even if the wheat dries on the field, the combine machines can't go into the field; they get stuck in the mud. So it's quite challenging. Then other farmers, they want to prepare land to plant for the season. It's very wet, they can't get into the fields. our infrastructure like the roads. This water is killing our roads. It's really our Department of Roads don't do any management or any maintenance on those roads. And every time it rains like this, big problems. Most of our roads are even, must have a 4x4 to go onto the gravel roads in the area. Yes, I think it's the eastern part of Northwest that have the big problems, and it's mostly the irrigation farmers with the wheat on the fields that have big problems at this stage and have a good chance to lose their whole harvest. Thank you, sir.
And then tell me, how do you survive usually when situation is like this? I suppose it also affects you financially.
Yeah, of course. The wheat on the fields are worth millions of rands, and it must come in now for your cash flow. So your cash flow at the bank is exactly written to the point where you must get this harvest in to go on. So if the rain keeps on going, most of the farmers, the irrigation farmers having wheat on the fields, will have cash flow problems.
Thank you very much, Mr. Van der Merwe. Dan Van der Merwe is one of the farmers here in Groot-Marico. We are currently at the Marico Bosveld farm. But I want to also speak to Susanna, who's also a farmer here. Susanna, you've heard Mr. Van der Merwe talking about some of the challenges that they are experiencing here. You're telling me that you also have challenges with network and other issues. Please do talk us through that.
Yes, indeed. We are grateful for the rain that we had this past week, but it goes with the challenges. If there's power cuts, Eskom can't get to the proper location to fix the lines. We struggle with network signals and all of those stuff. But fortunately, we've been in contact with it's a community-based civil society that we use to inform people of the flood warning and keep everybody informed of this situation.
And you're telling me that you also have a problem with people who want to take shortcuts to reach their destination and use or cross the rivers, which is really not advisable.
Yes, in these times it is very dangerous. It's extremely dangerous. We don't have telemetry in the rivers to give us proper flood warning or to inform the citizens if the water levels have dropped. So communication to the residents is difficult to keep everybody informed of the dangers lurking during the flood time.
Meanwhile, business owners in Bethlehem in the Free State have raised concerns about the poor drainage systems in the town. They say that it is partly to blame for flooding whenever it rains. Various shops, including the Sichaba Mall in the city centre, were flooded.
Major business premises and stores have been affected by the incessant rain. Mopping up operations continued after heavy rain over the past 2 days. Some of the owners lamented the poor drainage system in the area.
The drains aren't being kept in maintenance and they're not cleaned at all. So all the water dams up. There's no space where the water goes and all the water just dams up in front of all the shops here. And yeah, it causes a big problem because it goes in. When there's a lot of water, it goes into the shops and then we have to start cleaning and it's just mud everywhere. So it's also a risk for our clients as well because it's muddy, they can slip and fall. So yeah, it's a very bad problem here.
The problem here is that the sewage channels or drains are blocked. So the water, the rain that falls from the top of the town comes down in the sewage pipes and it blocks here and then it starts overflowing here. The overflowment here is not because of the catchment area and the river that's full. It's because of the drainage problem, which the pressure is too low.
The Dihlabe municipality says it's on standby to assist those affected by the heavy rain.
From municipal officials have been hard at work clearing all the debris from the stormwater channels that were blocked. That affected the flow of water. So today I don't think, even if it rains, the stormwater channels have been cleared of all the debris. Even the Jordan River that had debris from dead trees and what has been cleared and everything has been mopped off and water will be flowing. We don't foresee any problems.
Residents have been warned about the dangers of crossing the flooded bridges. They are also urged to avoid low-lying areas. Ishmael Mudiba, SABC News, Bethlehem.
Right, welcome back as we continue with more news now. 16 days of activism of no violence against women and children campaign just around the corner. The Oudtshoorn municipality in the Little Karoo has called on the men in its communities to accelerate the campaign. Several organizations and community leaders have pledged their support towards the campaign during a conference to discuss the scourge.
Oudtshoorn has the third highest incidence of GBV in the Western Cape. Social ills like poverty, unemployment, alcohol and drug abuse are contributing factors. There's hardly a day that goes by without any GBV-related incidents. The townsmen were urged to stand together and do something about it.
All the communities got together and we decided that we have to do something about this. And now that we're waiting for the 16 days of activism, which is going to start on the 25th of November, this is actually a prelude to that, to decide exactly what are we going to do. And as I put the challenge to everybody, and it was wholeheartedly accepted by every single one, that we have to demonstrate as men, our actions against this atrocities that are happening in our municipality.
The conference theme is Men in the Mirror, urging men to look at the image they portray as men and what image do they portray to their sons as role models. SABC played a big role in the conference, calling on men to also be protectors.
It doesn't help that you say you want to see more police officers. You want more police officers to do what? To do what you can also do yourself. You have to protect your family, you have to protect your kids, you have to protect the community, you have to report crime, you need to be vigilant in terms of ensuring that the area where you are living is safe for everyone to live.
The conference ended with men pledging to play a more active role in their communities, to not only stamp out GBV, but to also protect their women and children. They also pledged to be more visible in their activism, with marches planned in areas of Oudtshoorn where there are high incidents of GBV. Segui Chetty, SABC News, Oudtshoorn in the Little Karoo.
Right, that's all we have for you today. Thank you very much for tuning in. We are back next week for a look at the weekend review. But until then, from myself and the team, it's goodbye for now.